he's part of the Motor City Tribune, and he's had an awful lot of great reviews as well. Talking the Detroit Lions, talking Detroit everything. And joining us now, Jeremy Ballreich via the Global Satellite Network, presented by StreamYard. So you had something to say about the Carlos Correa and the Minnesota Twins thing. I know you had it up on the comments. So
Yeah.
what you thinking?
Well, it's actually really easy because he took the player option to opt out of that $11 million contract. So they can actually get him back for that same price for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And with what they have at shortstop, Carlos Correa is an upgrade, even if he's only on the field 75% of the time.
Right. Yeah,
So it makes perfect sense for the Twinkies to go ahead and grab him. I'm a Tigers fan too, so I call them the Twinkies. I have for years. And I love the pickup that we've had in the front office with getting Scott Harris and firing Avila and the moves he's making and the people he's brought in. The future's looking brighter, and we're at year one of a rebuild in the Tigers organization. So I don't see them making a big splash this year, but I do believe A.J. Hinch, despite the cheating scandal at Houston, because he's watched now and he won't be able to do that in Detroit, he's the right guy to build a team from the ground up with.
Yeah. Well, and I felt the same way about A.J. Hinch. I when he had the documentary with Tom Berducci, I still felt like he was just an honest guy. You know, he can't, because nobody else in that Astros organization would have came out and did the documentary like he did. So right. I gave him props for that, and I felt like he took that year suspension very well and was very professional of it. And when I seen he was going to Detroit, I felt like there's a lot of young kids, Akil Baddoo, Spencer Torkelson, and several others, even in Casey Mize. I think there is something there for Detroit to really rebound. Yeah, first year of the rebuild, maybe into second year. I don't know what we may see with Javier Baez, but
a future bench player.
Oh, geez.
He is way too aggressive at the plate. I hated the signing right away. Mm-hmm. What Detroit needed was 3 super consistent guys for the top of the lineup. Mm-hmm. They have a guy for speed that they can rotate in and out in Akil Baddoo. He can play at the top of the lineup or the bottom. He's just too inconsistent to stay in the top of the rotation for the batting. We need better back-end rotation help because Casey Mize and all those guys up at the front are great, but the 4 and 5, oof. And then we need God, I hate saying it, but we need somebody in the reliever department.
Yeah.
Greg Soto is the type of closer where he reminds me of Todd Jones and Papa Javi we used to have. Mm-hmm. He gets lonely and he puts people on base and puts himself in a situation to blow a save.
Yeah.
And so if you're adding friends on the base path, eventually somebody's going to bomb you and you blow the save.
Yeah,
it's a roller coaster ride. I hate it. You know, he'll have like 3 or 4 games in a row where he doesn't allow a guy on base and he strikes out 3 out of 4 guys with 1 walk. Yeah. And then the next time he comes out and it's walk, a single, no run scored. Okay, now I'll start striking people out. That's not a good way to be a closer.
Oh, yeah. I can only imagine how Greg Soto's going to be out in Philadelphia because with that relieving department they have, that's going to be really interesting. But you do get Nick Maton. You do get, Matt Vierling. You do get at least some young help as far as offense goes. But still, I mean, yeah. I've always said it. Relief pitching is always everything, especially when it comes to situational pitching. Because your starter is only there to give you 1 to 5, close to 6, possibly 7, depending on how good of a role he's on, and then leave it to the rest of the relief. Because that's always been their job. They'll set him up and then find the guy that's going to close it out who can deal with those high-strung scenarios. So
and that Eduardo guy we signed last year, I was like, why?
Yeah. So let's get to the matter at hand. So yes. This is fate for the Detroit Lions. And they're playing on the road in Lambeau against the Packers. My thing is, I have loved with what Ben Johnson's done for the offense. I mean, with Jared Goff, I mean, he's a great home quarterback. I've said it several times. When he's in the dome at Ford Field, he works well. I love the offensive pieces. Like, people forget that, look, they drafted Jameson Williams. He's going to pick up a lot of the load. So they've got a stacked receiving core, and they got situational receivers. So, but I do think they have to really reshape the defense. I do think they got to add a couple more of those pieces. But how impressed were you with Detroit throughout this season leading up to where we are on Sunday night?
Well, I wrote an article about it. During the 1-6 period, our passing defensive coordinator, if you looked, our secondary was abysmal outside of Jeff Okudah to start the season.
It was atrocious.
I mean, we were giving up over 300 yards for the air and over 100 yards per game in every game in the 1-6 run.
Mm-hmm.
Then you fire Aubrey Pleasant, who is the passing defensive game coordinator as well as the defensive backs coach. Mm-hmm. That's when you saw the change, because they started mixing in more zone. They started playing to the players' strengths. Mm-hmm. The problem is Jeff Okudah still played great until right after the Buffalo game. Right after the Buffalo game, he had that illness and he missed a couple games. He hasn't been the same since. But I noticed also they're playing him in soft zone coverage when he's a press man corner. So if you're not playing to his strengths, you use him in a limited fashion. Because then he goes into a rotational role. Because I notice Amani Oruwariye, Will Harris, and all the other bums that can only play zone started not looking like as much of a bum. Because those guys are not man cover. So we do need at least one, maybe two corners. We need another safety, because Deshaun Elliott already proved he can't stay on the field. I don't know if we re-sign him. If we do, it won't be for a big contract, because he didn't stay on the field this year. We definitely need help at middle linebacker. Even though Anzalone played a lot better this year than last year, he's still a liability at times in coverage.
Yeah.
Malcolm Rodriguez was great until he got sick, and he's been off and on since he came back. Derek Barnes is a great rotational guy, but not a starter yet.
Yeah.
Chris Board, I can care less if he stays on the team or not. He can't cover. He barely tackles when he's in the lineup. And the only thing he does well is special teams. Jared Davis, thank God. The New York Giants took him off our hands. We put him on the practice squad, and they signed him because of how many injuries they got in the linebacker department.
Yeah.
But where we really need the help, and you can see it all season, when our DNs and linebackers couldn't get pressure, was because the interior D-line play sucked majorly. I mean, it was inconsistent with Aleem, Comiskey, Bugs, Benito Jones, all of them. It was inconsistent on the way they were able to eat up blocks, because that's what those big guys are supposed to do. If you're running a 4-2-5, your 2D tackles should be eating up 3 to 4 guys.
Yeah.
If they don't, that's what allows the double teams to the guys on the outside. And we saw it. That's when everybody started struggling. Interior, especially once Kaminsky got hurt, and we had to start using Brockers again because he's a bump on the D-line and doesn't eat up blocks. And I think he olays for running backs. I don't know. That's why every time he's a healthy scratch, I said, hey, we got a chance to win.
Yeah, it is interesting with Detroit. I mean, yeah, they need all the defensive help that they can possibly get. I mean, I know it had to have seemed like it was a tough loss losing Darius Slay to the Philadelphia Eagles with those times being there in Detroit. But yeah, I've seen the middle linebacking position as well, and I'm just like, good God. If you're leaving Robert Tonyan or you're leaving any of those guys open in the middle of the field,
you're torched.
You're destroyed. And so, but I will say, I mean, this team, when I said it in the beginning of the season, I felt like the team, because we've watched them on Hard Knocks, they looked emotionally invested. Like
and they are.
Yeah, and it shows for itself. I mean, look. There's so much of Dan Campbell you could tolerate with, I mean, with the biting of the ankles, bringing the lion into the stadium.
Oh, come on, look. Yeah. Look what I'm wearing. Detroit football. Come on.
But I will give him credit for this. He gives them a type of juice that most people can't even explain. I mean, we've seen this with Jamal. Yeah, we're seeing this with Jamal Williams. We're seeing this with a lot of different players. So it's kind of got me excited as to, so Detroit, they blow out their opponent last week, and Green Bay did the same to division rival Minnesota. And so now here you are in this stage, Green Bay's getting a little bit healthy, but it is Aaron Rodgers, and depending on what he does in those situations, I mean, how do you think that Detroit will have to line up against Aaron Rodgers?
Number one, we have to force it into Aaron Rodgers' hands. He doesn't have the weapons he's used to. He's used to MVS. He's used to Devontae Adams being there. And if you look last year when he was trying to come back in that game versus Detroit in Week 18, he used Devontae Adams almost exclusively. It was 119 yards in the first half to Devontae Adams and 39 to everybody else.
Yeah.
So you take away that run game, he becomes one-dimensional as well.
Yeah.
Because all he will be able to do is if it's 10 yards or less, he might be able to run outside the pocket if it holds to get you a first down, but he's not going to be able to throw a guy open. Everybody said that he's that guy that can throw somebody open, and we've seen it all year. He doesn't.
Right.
Because if you actually look, during their 4-0 run, he's had 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 97 QBR rating. During our 4-2 run, Jared Goff has a 113.8, 12 touchdowns, and 0 picks.
Oh, yeah. He looked real good.
And I give all the credit to Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell with the play calling and everything they changed since Week 8 on. Because it started off with that, it was a weak win, but we'll take it. It's more Green Bay lost than Detroit won, because I think somebody put blinders on Aaron Rodgers and he just said, screw it, Kirby Joseph is out there somewhere.
I mean, yeah, and especially looking at the beginning of the season with Aaron Rodgers, I mean, it was going to be tough because it's all young wide receivers, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and all these no-namers outside of Robert Tonyan. I mean,
and then you had the corpse of Sammy Watson, the corpse of Randall Cobb, who doesn't show up till Week 8, and then you're lucky if he plays the rest of the season because he usually gets hurt.
Yeah, so the only reliability you got is really just the run game with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon.
And Anthony Lazard.
Yep.
Don't forget about Lazard, because Lazard's been on the team. But when that's your number one wide receiver, I said when I was ranking preseason-wise the wide receiver rooms in the NFC North, it was a toss-up between Minnesota and Detroit if Jameson Williams was healthy right off the rip.
Right.
I said, if he was healthy right off the rip, it's a 1A, 1B. Flip it however you want, whether it's Minnesota at top or Detroit. I said, then it's 2A, 2B with Green Bay Packers and Chicago. And then Chicago kept trading for guys that were bums.
Yeah. Well, and
N'Keal Harry, Chase Claypool, who's only a top 5 quarterback if you start from the bottom up.
Yeah. Yeah, and the one thing, too, about Chicago, like I mentioned it, I mean, I know why they had to get rid of Roquan Smith, and even for Robert Quinn, they're trying to get more draft capital. They're trying to get more money in the bank for them to spend big this offseason. And you're only hoping that they get the right – they got to get the right support for Justin Fields. I mean, I feel like Matt Eberflus could be that good coach that can help him out in those scenarios, because I do like Lou Getsy. I think he's very creative. You could see it in some plays. There's times where he will utilize a lot of what Justin Fields' strength is, but the offensive line and the weapons he has around him, it's not there yet. So, and that's why I said I think Detroit would have the 3rd spot, because I just know Chicago's rebuilding. Green Bay was going to take a hit. Minnesota was just going to come out. Now, I'm questionable about how Minnesota's going to go in, because I feel like they could be a one-and-done team in the playoffs.
They are a one-and-done team.
Yeah, the defense right now has not been playing up to its strengths.
They've got a couple injuries. They got a couple guys that are not playing to their contracts, let alone their play level.
Yep.
And, and everybody says, what do you mean they're not playing to their contract? I said, I'm sorry. If you performed at this level and earned a contract, you're not playing to the contract you were given. And I've said the same thing about Romeo Okwara. Yeah. I sit there, I said, everybody says, oh, we should have gave that money to this player or that player. I said, once we signed, when we had all that dead cap and so little salary left over, once you signed Romeo Okwara to 13-9, you couldn't keep Marvin Jones. You couldn't keep Jamal Agnew. You couldn't keep Matt Prater. I said, that contract screwed the team for a year. I said, but The dead cap lessens next year. The cap goes up, and we'll have a lot more room. But we're still only going to have enough room for who we're drafting with 2 first-round picks again.
Yep.
And also prove-it players.
Yep.
And look what we did. That's exactly what we did. We did prove-it players. We said, screw the kicker. We're just going to sign everybody out of free agency we can and have an open market for 6 weeks on who's going to be our kicker.
Well, in hell, now you got one productive with Mike Badgley, and I remember his time with the Chargers, and so it's like you can get.
And he's not bad. He's not bad, but he doesn't have that big leg, which at times this offense still needs that. We've seen it. That's why we go for it on 4th down midfield so much. I tried to tell everybody. I said, no, his career long is 54, and his percentage from there is 25%. So therefore, you got to get it to 48 or closer.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I do want to talk about Jared Goff, though. I mean, the fact that this year,
amazing year.
He's had a really, really good year. I felt like Ben Johnson really has worked well with Jared Goff, and I felt like too. And I was going to bring this comparison too, because first of all, the Rams, they did a great thing of a great service for Matt Stafford. I really do think that they have. But even making the trade of both those quarterbacks under Sean McVay, it's almost as if they were the same quarterback in the same system.
I've said the same thing.
And then seeing Jared Goff now, like, he's got real good potential in him. But there are times he can drive you nuts if there's a play that has to be made and it does not go as planned. Even if it's like an off-scripted play, it still won't go as planned.
Right.
But to get to this point now where the Lions have been on fire, has there been a little more of a maturity jump from Jared Goff that you could see that now with him and even going into a big game like this tonight?
Well, I actually saw it before we got Jared Goff. I said something about that. 2018 Rams. What did he do? 5,000 yards, 41 touchdowns, 19 picks. What happened last year with Matt Stafford? 5,000 yards, 41 touchdowns, 17 picks, tied for the league lead. With Matt Stafford. But the difference was the completion percentage for Matthew Stafford was less than when Jared Goff was in LA.
Yeah.
I sat there, I said, think about it. He had all the same weapons. It was actually an equal team. That top 3 O-line, top 10 wide receiver room, 2 speedsters, 1 route runner. The route runner was who he used, just like in Detroit. Matt Stafford would go to Golden Tate and turned him into a number 1 receiver when he should have been a number 3 anywhere else. He did it with Cooper Kupp. This year, what did Cooper Kupp look like? He still looked great. He still looked great while Stafford was in. As soon as Stafford went down, he got hurt.
Yep.
Because he went back to the Cooper Kupp we saw with Goff his last year in LA. A good receiver that can get open, catch a lot of balls, but he wasn't getting that separation because he had no speedsters around him.
Right.
Because that was the difference between 2018 and the 2019 and 20 Rams. You had Brandon Cooks and Josh Reynolds. You let Josh Reynolds and Brandon Cooks both walk in free agency. So then you're left with Robert Woods, which is Cooper Kupp 1B.
Yep.
And that is why Goff struggled. It was less to do with the play calling than it was to do with the personnel around him. And they went from a 3rd-ranked O-line to the 29th ranked O-line and then the 31st ranked O-line in 2020. That's the big disparity. You give Goff a decent running game, which they didn't have in 2019 or 20 either. And he flourishes because he's number 1 in the league, hands down. You can look up all the stats. In play action, he is the best quarterback in play action in football. Number 2 is Tom Brady. And it's a 3% difference in completion percentage. And Goff has 5 more touchdowns than Tom Brady in play action. So, and over these last 3 years. Even in 2020, with a bad running game in play action, he was better than Tom Brady, and that's scary sad.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, like, looking at Jared Goff, I mean, I know for a fact he's accurate. I know he's somebody that can distribute that football. And, I mean, I've been really impressed with how the wide receiver room has looked like in Detroit because I knew that this was going to be a hell of a year for Amon-Ra St. Brown after what we saw last year and what we got out of him. And then to add in more of a room with DJ Chark and with Jameson Williams as a draft pick, and then, of course, adding Josh Reynolds and a few others. I felt like they have a mixture of their set receivers, but they also have situational receivers. That's where Josh Reynolds and all the rest of them come in. And it's
Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, Tom Kennedy, all those guys.
Yeah, and it worked out beautifully for this offense. Now, the other thing is, too, and I talked about this, was the run game. Anthony Lynn is a running backs coach. I knew with what they were going to get with him, even as a former Charger head coach. I mean, the run game had been exceptional. And so to see DeAndre Swift, I picked him in fantasy football, and I said, he's going to have a real good year because even in the last 2 seasons he's had, like, the offensive line was not great. They were not opening up spaces. They were not giving enough for the run game to really produce well. So by the 3rd year, Penei Sewell's a hit. And then the rest of, the offensive line is going to flow with him. So how impressed with the run game have you seen between him and Jamal Williams? Because I still feel like DeAndre Swift, he's got that it factor, but it's all about the tempo and it's all about designing the play right for the run game to work.
No, Deuce Staley, you saw it in Hard Knocks. He told DeAndre Swift, this team is not built for you to go outside anymore. You have to cut back in. Use your blockers. You hit that inside, it'd have been a touchdown. You went outside, got 20 yards. Great, fantastic. Another first down. Inside, it was a touchdown.
Yep.
So that being said, that's a mental thing with Swift because he gets hurt a lot. The more carries and touches he gets in a game, I can break it down to you. Anything over 16 touches per game, he's injured the next game.
Yep.
Every time. So last week, 11 carries, 4 receptions. Perfect. Mm-hmm. That's how you use him. You can't use him more than that, so he can't be a featured back. That is why I say they should probably either move on next year or still draft one, keep him just in case so when he gets hurt, so there isn't such a disparity drop in talent level for your speed receiving back.
Right.
And the guy I like, and you can have him pretty late, Eric Gray out of Oklahoma. He's a good all-around back. He has about the same speed. He's a little better built, able to take a pounding. He breaks tackles versus runs away from contact. I like that idea.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I mean, I literally paid attention to like the kid they have in Minnesota. I thought he's got real good speedster help as well because I just feel like with Bijan Robinson, he kind of scares me.
A lot of miles on those legs. I like his backup even better. If you're going to take a power back, Roshan Johnson, who's about the same size, a little quicker, and he's just an inch shorter, but the same weight. So he's got a stockier build, and he's only had 1 fumble since his sophomore year of high school.
Yeah, and that I think I could definitely rely on because if you need somebody to bust the line through, get them shaken up, and then bring your speed right back in and be able to bust through the line easily, that could really, really help.
Yeah, I've done a lot of research on the running backs this year. And if you want a pure speed guy that can only run the ball, it's Devin Achane out of Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
And the other guy I like that has a lot of speed, he's got a little size. He played well for my home team here, the Wolverines, and then he switched to UCLA and became elite.
Yeah.
Zach Charbonnet, another pure runner. He's not going to catch out of the backfield, but he is a willing blocker in the passing game out of the backfield. So you have options there to go with, but you have to see what fits your team.
Right.
Mentally. Personally, I would bring Jamal Williams back and put DeAndre Swift on the trade block in the offseason. Get a third or later. If it's later, you take 2 picks, of course. But get a 3rd or 4th rounder for him. And because that's really, if you look at his production, it's great. But being on the field is the key. Availability is the best ability. And he does not block in the passing game. He can't even chip somebody.
Right. Yeah, so his only production would obviously just be running the football more than
or receiving
else.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I I like that thought. I think you're right. I think putting him like with a third, fourth rounder could really. And by the way, I mean, second to like fifth round guys, they literally are like hidden gems. They're a dime a dozen. Like
There's sixth round guys. I wish we'd have kept, Bob Quinn, as good as he was at drafting O-line. You know what he was bad at? Everything else.
Yeah. No,
that's
true.
I mean, and you guys mentioned TJ Hawkinson. I had a name for him since his second year here, and it proved it this year. TJ Droppinson.
Oh.
I mean, the guy would have 2 games where he looked like the best tight end on the planet, and he'd have 8 games where you're just like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. He was touted as an extra run blocker or an extra tackle in the run game. You want to know where he ranked before he was traded from Detroit in run blocking? Out of 120 O-linemen and tight ends, he was 115th in the league.
Oh, geez. Wow.
So his blocking was abysmal. He was playing his way out of Detroit. Mm-hmm. So they went to him and they said, well, you've got 15th in the league tight end skills this year, and that's what you've provided for us. You're leading the team in drops. He was leading the team in drops. So they said, we'll offer you $8.5 million. Mm-hmm. He goes, no, I want $15 million or more. I want to be paid like a top 3 tight end. And they said, all right. They got on the horn. Mm-hmm. And I love the trade because now we get an extra second this year, which gives us top 5 picks in the top 100 again. Mm-hmm. And we get a third round next year. And it was 2 fourths. This year's fourth and next year's fourth we gave up. But it's conditional. If Minnesota, which I don't think they will, is able to win a playoff game this season, the fourth this year becomes our 5th. So then you're talking about 6 picks in the top 150. Give me that all day.
Mm-hmm. No, that would work out beautifully. I mean, the fact that, with that amount of players there, oh man, I think Detroit would have an absolute ball. It's not like the tight end they have now isn't like he's producing real good along with all this.
All 3 of those tight ends have produced more touchdowns than Hawk did.
Yeah.
In less games.
Yeah. It's really shown the difference. So, I mean, because Detroit is such a good story of it because of the fact of everybody is just clicking really well. And the fact that, because I said this, I was like, they've got the best scoring offense. Like, and you could just tell if the defense literally, if they could fix that to where the defense could be shut down, it would be a completely different team. And the NFC is wide open outside of San Francisco and Philadelphia and even a little bits and pieces of Dallas. This conference is wide open.
Think about this. If our defense would have been average to start the season, just average, we'd have 4 more wins. Where would we be sitting?
Oh, you would already be sitting right about the 5th, 6th seed by now.
No, we probably wouldn't have lost to Minnesota the first game is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So we'd have had 1 more win than them. We'd be winning the division and in the top 4 seeds.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying. That was the difference. I said the only question mark I had on this team going into the season was the defense. I said, you guys watch out. I knew Houston had a lingering issue that came out of college. And that's why we medically waived him, even though we signed him to his contract. We medically waived him at the end of preseason and then put him on the practice squad protected.
Yeah,
that was why we did that. Because once he was healthy and cleared that medical clear, boom, he was back in the lineup. And look how electric he's been. He's averaging 1.9 sacks per game. If he'd have been able to play all 17 games, that's 22 and a half sacks in a season as a rookie.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, that's where I know, like, the defense was just so questionable, but I loved the production that Penei Sewell's put on the offensive line and really given more time. And so, and my big thing is, too, because I picked Detroit to win this game because I felt like it's high intensity. I feel like because Green Bay's backs are against the wall, and even though, yes, they've blown out Minnesota, great. Okay, we all know it's Kirk Cousins at times.
But, prime time. But
right.
Anyway.
but aside from that is like, okay, they're in Lambeau, but I understand one thing. They got beat by San Francisco at home in the playoffs. And so that's why I'm like, here they are again with their backs against the wall. and they have to prove it. And if Aaron Rodgers does not produce the way that he does, I just think his tenure in Green Bay may be done. That's why I said I think the Tennessee move would work because they just got to show Jordan some love. They literally have to get Jordan Love to play, which he can clearly play, and they have to rework because first of all, they don't even have an owner. They don't even have anybody.
No, it's owner by committee. Yep. They got somebody they put in as a CEO, and he runs the team by doing it through a vote through all those shareholders.
Yeah. And so, and
but
I
it's
remember
just the
watching.
Top, if I remember right, it's the top 51% of shareholders that has the vote. Everybody that has like a half a share or a single share, those guys don't get a vote.
Right.
But that being said, what was most impressive about this season? Mm-hmm. Now, we've had Barry Sanders, Herman Moore, Brett Perriman, and Johnny Morton on the field, which was an electric offense. Mm-hmm. This is the first time in Lions history, and it's in 16 games, so it's a relative comparison.
Oh, yeah.
4,000 passing yards and 2,000 rushing yards in the same season. Mm-hmm. It's also the first time ever in Lions history that two running backs have 8+ touchdowns in the same season. That right there tells you what the difference in this offense from this year to last year with Lynn and then switching to Ben Johnson halfway through the season. Mm-hmm. That is the biggest difference in this offense.
Yeah. Wow. And that's why I said, even like looking at this offense, I said, this has got to be the best thing that Detroit could finally have. A productive offense, one that there is multitudes of offensive weapons that they could literally distribute to, and then they would work beautifully. What has been your thought so far? I mean, I know it's shortened amount of games, but as far as the potentiality of Jameson Williams, I said he'll come in, he'll be a real good route runner, and I think he also can produce very well with a complement piece with Amon-Ra St. Brown being that number one. And how explosive would he be, even looking into next season?
That's where I see him being explosive is next season, because this season, basically, he's only played like a preseason of games so far. Right. So he's very limited into what he's learned of the playbook. He couldn't start practicing until 2 weeks before he came active with the first team, because the first week you're off of that IR, you're doing limited solo drills. You're not with the team yet. The second week is when you join the team, and the third week is usually when you get put active before the 21 days are up. Right. And that's exactly how his time frame went. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, I'll tell you the difference. Look at the Jacksonville game. Just him being on the field and the way the safeties and the corners would cheat up to cover him, and the way the run game just exploded on Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I saw Harrison Smith was out for the Lions game versus the Vikings in the following week, I said, you watch. They're losing this game because that safety, that rookie safety not named Sinai, the one on the other side, is going to make a bonehead move, and it'll be a 40+ yard Jameson Williams touchdown. First play action play of the game. Boom. It was so bad. Everybody says, oh, he had to slow down. I said, no, he turned around and looked at a safety 20 yards away from him and waved at Jared Goff. Watch the play. He waved. He goes, hey, I'm open. And Jared Goff goes, okay.
And just dumps it right up off to him. Man.
Yeah. I mean, he only had the ball for, what was it, 3.3 seconds is when Goff had the ball?
Yeah.
And Jameson Williams already ran 38 yards.
Yeah. That's a quick distribution.
3.3 seconds.
Wow, that was a quick distribution. Yeah, that's insane. But I really am looking forward to this Sunday night game. I think it's going to be one that is going to be very electrifying. Two of NFC North's, division rivals, and one that it's obviously a playoff implication because, of course, the fate has to be decided where Seattle's got to lose. But I have a feeling, though. And I took the Rams.
Seattle
I just feel like the Rams might play spoiler. They might end up playing spoiler with Geno
Number
Smith.
One, Geno is doing Geno things to end the season. Yep. He's looking like the Geno Smith of the Jets and Giants, not the Geno Smith that's been at the Seahawks all year. Number two, that run defense for the Rams is better than everybody thinks because of Warner and because Jalen Ramsey, much like Okudah, likes to set the edge in the run game.
Yep.
I don't know, Aaron Donald?
Aaron Donald. He's not in. He's out for the
he's
season.
not. Oh, okay.
He's been out for the season for like 7 weeks. But they've been doing it by committee there on the D line.
Right.
And so I really don't, in the run game, I'm not worried about it. I'm more worried about that passing game because Jalen Ramsey to start the season looked like he went to the Eli Apple School of Covering, and then he turned it around midway through the season once Aaron Donald got hurt and became Jalen Ramsey again. It was scary. I don't want to see him go back to that.
Oh, yeah. No,
because you remember through the first 6 weeks I did it. I said, wow, he's on pace to beat Trayvon Diggs for how many yards wide receivers was getting against him.
Oh, yeah. That's why I was like, man, he's blowing a lot of these coverages. He's like, he did everybody. And that's why I was so appalled that he was number 9 on the top 100 with like, I mean, you're better than Josh Allen and better than like some of these guys behind him. And then all of a sudden he could not solidify that this year. That's where I think everybody was just dogging on him the second they played week 1 against the Bills. So it's like, but I do think that in this game, I'm really excited about the fact that, you know, Green Bay with their backs against the wall. I just feel like it's so much pressure that, and again, Green Bay is just that, they are just that really finesse team that when the Lamborghini is out and the sun is shining, it's a beautiful drive. When there's rain, there's hail, there's so much of it. It's just they hide. They don't really cover as much. So that's where I'm with them. Yeah. I just feel like Detroit is going to come out hurting their kneecaps, literally punching them in the mouth. And I feel like that's just not going to be enough for Green Bay to really just get past that. So I feel like Detroit might have the upper hand up on it. But
I wrote the scenario in my review as the both case scenario. I always do that because I don't, as an editorialist, you can't be a homer all the time.
Oh, this is true.
And I tried explaining this to somebody. You just can't go with the positive side. You have to look at the negative side. But either way, I never had Green Bay scoring more than 28 points in this game.
Yeah.
I said, if it's good and everything goes right, Detroit will win 34-28. And how I came up with the 6-point spread was because we beat them by 6 points when both teams were bad and just turning it around.
Yeah.
So, and I said, if everything goes off the rails, it's 27-20 Green Bay.
Yeah.
That's what I see happening. And it's all going to depend on if we can maintain the gaps in the running game. But here's an interesting fact. If you go back and look at all 5 games we played in the division so far, we've only given up 250 yards on the ground to running backs.
Yeah.
In all 5 games combined. I tried explaining this to people. I sat there, I said, the only thing that has beat us truly in the running game other than New England and Carolina has been mobile QBs.
Yeah. No,
I sat there, I said, if you take the mobile QB yards, this is the 22nd best rushing defense in the league, not the 32nd.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Green Bay, who's faced less mobile quarterbacks, is the 28th rushing defense in the league. Think about that for a minute.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really, really true. That's why I'm like, I just don't think that Green Bay really just has it in them. I don't think
something's wrong with Aaron Rodgers. I don't know what's wrong with him, but
you want to know what's wrong with Aaron Rodgers? He spent too much time with that nature witch he was with, Blue, in the offseason, smoking DMTs and magic mushrooms, instead of spending time building chemistry with his receivers.
Yeah, with the ayahuasca.
Yeah. I'm just saying, he had to.
He's not the same. He just doesn't have that killer instinct anymore.
Did you see what he did last week that I thought was funny? Is he finally cut his hair and cleaned his act and didn't look like the guy that sells stolen catalytic converters to recycling centers anymore. He got rid of the man bun, cut off the long hair, went with the clean cut look like he had in 2010. It's like something snapped. He woke up and goes, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah, because it just didn't seem like he was. I know he doesn't really have really much for weapons as much as he used to, given the fact that Devontae Adams is now gone. But I don't know, man. It just seemed like he didn't. When it came to like finishing off games or really solidifying that lead, it just didn't seem like he had that killer instinct anymore.
He doesn't. If it wasn't for the running game, they wouldn't have won the last 4 games.
Yeah.
Well, We'll see exactly how Sunday night may end up turning out for the Detroit Lions. But like I said, I have full confidence in them that I think they're going to come out aggressively against a division rival. And I think they're going to put up more of a fight than Minnesota really did. So hopefully we'll see that narrative. But Jeremy, it was great having you up on here with us. Where can people find you on your social medias as well to get more of Detroit Lions?
Okay, you have my YouTube channel, Kneecap Biting with Smokin' Jeremy B. You have at Smokin' Jeremy B on Twitter. And of course, the Motor City Tribune is owned by the South Florida Tribune. So how you get to that is you go to the South Florida Tribune homepage and you click the 3 little hash marks. That'll bring up the Motor City Tribune, and I'm listed in their authors there. And you can also find me on Sports Empire Network. Normally I'm on the Sunday morning drive, but this show's at the same time as that show. I had to make a decision, and I was like, you know what? I would love to focus a show on Detroit for a minute. So I'm going to take the week off and do this.
All right, there you go. So that's where you can find Jeremy up on there. Thank you so much and good luck for Sunday night. I am excited. I'm going to have my eyes glued up on that game, and I better see some kneecaps being eaten up out there against those Packers.
Well, here's the one thing you got to remember about Green Bay. In 2019, they heated their field. There has not been injuries to any players outside of the Packers organization in the last weeks of the season anymore.
So there you go. There's a good note from that. So we'll have a hell of a game. All right, Jeremy.
Hold on, Jeremy. I need a "There's No Turds Here" T-shirt from you. I need that.
I'm trying to work on getting another one, and it's going to say NFL, and it says the new effing Lions.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I love Dan Campbell. What he's doing. He's been great.
Oh, you can't tell I do.
All right,
I bought my first jersey since Billy Sims played, and it has number 97 on it. Does that tell you anything?
Yeah.
Oh man, I got old school right there. All righty, Jeremy, take care of yourself. Have a good rest of the weekend. And
thank you.
Yes, we shall see what fate is in store for the Lions tonight. Take care of yourself.
Go Lions and one pride.
Man, great stuff.